Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, guys. Celtic Warband here, and thanks for tuning in to another battle in Total War Attila. This is a 3 vs 3, and it was a subscribers battle replay submitted by both James the Great and Max Laser, so I'm assuming it is a pretty good one. And it is a very large battle as well. There's over 16,000 men on the battlefield today, so we will be using slow motion to make sure that the battle goes as smoothly as possible. But without further ado, let's take a look at the army comps. The first army on the battlefield today is the Eastern Roman Empire, commanded by James the Great. And for all of these army comps, I'm going to keep the video paused because it actually starts right away. And with how quick the allies and the enemies move forwards to engage, it'll just be easier to make sure I don't miss any units if I keep it paused the entire time. But looking at James the Great's army here, I think that the rules for the battle were max 5 cavalry, and he does have 5 units of Clibinari, which is a very good shock cavalry unit, and they also have ammunition as well. They have a bow that I believe can fire 2 or 3 shots before they actually go into melee. High charge bonus as well, but low missile block, so you got to be careful to keep them away from enemy skirmishers. He also has a Palatina guard for his general, very, very cheap, but I don't think he's planning on using him in melee too aggressively. He's also got 1 unit of Elite Ballistariae here, so only 1 unit of crossbows, because most of his money has gone into 9 units of Hatariae Guard, and these guys are very, very pricey. So having 9 of them on the battlefield, this is basically his main infantry unit. The Hatariae Guard is actually quite good too, because they do have a ranged attack before they go into melee. I believe they throw one-handed axes, which is really cool. But he also has a few units of spears as well. He has 4 units of the Eastern Auxilia Palatina. So I'm sure he will form up a spear wall in the front lines and then follow it closely behind with his heavy axes. But that is it for James the Great's army, so let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. The second army on the battlefield today is Aksum, commanded by Max Laser, and he's brought a pretty solid army, the middle of which consists of 4 units of Bayar's Chosen, and he also has 4 units of Spice Guard in the center as well, and these guys look really awesome. 2-handed axes. They're medium axe infantry tier 2. Again, they've got the poor missile block, which most 2-handed axes do have, but excellent armor-piercing damage. So I think he's going to, again, just like James the Great, have a nice solid line of Bayar's Chosen and then follow in closely behind with the axes. And then, of course, he's got his General's Bodyguard here, the Desert Warlord. And he has 2 identical flanks, so we'll just look at one and then just be aware that it's the same on the other flank as well. So he does have a couple units of these armored Camel warriors. And way over to here, he's got 1 unit of Bet George's cavalry, which is reflective on the other flank. And he has a unit of Sons of Invincible Mehram. Probably not how you pronounce that, but I tried. And he's also got another spear unit here. Still registering the Bet George's cavalry. There we go, the Maskell Spearmen. So he has 1 on either flank of them as well. And then he also has, way in the front over here, he's got 1 unit of Elite Tor Warriors. So 1 on either flank. And that pretty much rounds out his force. So spears and cavalry on the flanks, and then he's got some good swords and axes in the center. But that is it for Max Laser's force, so let's go ahead and take a look at the final ally. The final allied army on the battlefield today is the Eastern Roman Empire once again, and this one is commanded by Mitterpack 1. And so it's interesting that we've got a nice core Aksum army in the center and then the Eastern Roman Empire on either flank. So I like that kind of even positioning, but that's just my OCD talking. That's kind of why you never really see me playing random armies where I just have like 1 unit or 3. Like I always usually go in groups of 2 or 4 if I can help it. Don't know if that's a weakness or a strength, but anyways. So looking at Mitterpack's army in the front lines, he's actually bringing some archers, which is good because really limited to no skirmishers for Aksum and James the Great's ERE army. But Mitterpack 1 is bringing 4 units of the armored Sagittarii, and then following closely behind, he's got 4 units of the Menelatoi. So he's got some pikemen. He's also gone really heavy on the Hatariae Guard for his mainline infantry. He has 6 units of the Hatariae Guard. So that means that 9 plus 6, quick maths, 15 there. So 15 units of heavy axes for the Eastern Roman Empire, not including the 4 units of Spice Guard for Aksum. So really axe heavy on this on the Allied front here. But he's also got a few units of Clibinari, just like James the Great. I think he has 4 units total of them, or 3. He's also got 1 unit of Eastern Auxiliary Palatina, or Auxilia Palatina. And he's brought some melee cavalry over here as well. He's got the Tagmata Cavalry, and then he's brought the Master Militum for his general. So that is it for the Allied armies, so let's go ahead and take a look at the enemy armies. And now we come to the enemy armies on the battlefield today, and all 3 of the enemies have formed up in one mega army, as you can see here. So what we're going to do is just go through all 3 army comps all together, because it'd be almost impossible for me to just pick out each individual unit for each player. But as far as the 3 players go, we've got Pitaudu 59 WSH as the Franks, Elidials as the Langobards, and French Führer as the Sassanid Empire. And yeah, there's about 8,300 in this one mega army, so very formidable force here. So let's go ahead and take a look at it line by line. So starting with some of the Franks here, looks like the first line here is 4 units of these Royal Estrationes. And I know that kind of sounds Spanish, but it's the best way that I can think to pronounce that. And then they've got a few units of Germanic Spearmasters following that up. And then we've got some Sassanid Armenian Slingers here. Now, these Armenian Slingers are actually really good because going against other Slingers, maybe some of the Eastern factions do have this mechanic as well, but as far as I know, I think it's only the Sassanids where the Slingers actually have a shield. So as they're able to pick down the enemy has a hard time in getting rid of these Slingers just due to the fact that they have that extra protection from the shield. Looking at the next line here, we're starting to get into the Langobards. I think there's 6 units total of the Godin's Chosen, which is a very elite unit. And then we've got more of the Sassanids here. We've got some elite Immortals. Then we've got a mix of elite Germanic archers and horse slayers here. More elite Germanic archers in behind. Then we've got some Royal Persian archers. So it looks like they've gone very skirmisher heavy, these 3 enemies. Whereas the allies on the other side have gone pretty melee focused. But we've got some Sogdian warriors here. I think this is the most elite units for the Sassanids, apart from the elite Immortals, of course. Looks like they've got a couple units in behind. And here is the General's Bodyguard. We've got Safbed right at the end. And he's also bringing a unit of war elephants to the battlefield. He's got armored Indian war elephants. I think these are better than the African war elephants. The armored Indian ones are really, really solid. You can see there in the left in the unit card, devastating charge. I'm hoping to see some devastating charges in this battle. But they put all of their cavalry over here on the flanks, so you can see we've got a nice line of noble Germanic horsemen. And then right in front, we've got some of the Sassanid cavalry, so we've got some Gaian Aspar, some Pushtigan Cataphracts, 2 units of them, and then he's got some Sogdian Camel Riders. And then looking at the other flank, we've got the Frankish cavalry, which is Sacra Francisca, which I think is their best cavalry unit. A really, really nice looking unit too. I love getting thumbnails of these guys charging forwards just due to the oval-like shields and their long lances. It really, really does something for me. I really, really enjoy that. Apart from, or sorry, I should say in addition to their armor as well. It looks kind of like the golden armor of the Alans. So very, very cool. They almost look like Alani cavalry as well. But enough rambling on from me. That is it for the enemy armies. So without further ado, let's get to the battle. Alright, welcome to the battlefield, and we've got the forces of the Eastern Roman Empire moving back to try and draw in this extremely large single army here. The 3 enemy players are still moving as one force, which is very, very interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that in Attila before, having all of the units moving together as it would be one army. However, the problem is that there are 3 commanders in this army, and we do know from historical standpoints that oftentimes when there are multiple generals involved in one single one single deployment like this, there can be a little bit of chaos that does arise from that. Orders, being belayed and other orders not being followed through because it's not from their commander and such. But from a gaming aspect in Total War here, this is a pretty risky move, because if we zoom out and take a look at what James the Great, Max Laser, and Mitterpack 1 are doing, they're slowly positioning themselves to surround all of the enemies together. You can see where the red line is drawn here. There is a little hill which James the Great has put his cavalry up onto here, and he's almost drawn all of the forces of the Franks, Sassanids, and Langobards in towards him. He's got his Eastern Auxilia Palatina formed up here, the Hetarier Guard very close behind, but Max Laser ever inching forwards here, more on a 45-degree angle to engage the forces as they get sucked into this trap of engaging James the Great and his Eastern Roman Empire forces. Meanwhile, Mitterpack 1 over here, he's got his cavalry, his Clibinari, over to try and completely surround these opponents. Really, the only way that they are safe, or sorry, the only side that they're safe from is the red line here. But luckily, we do have some of the Sassanid forces over here and the Sacra Francisca that have stopped their advance, so they are not going to allow themselves to be completely encircled. So well done there. That was a good catch. But again, most of the infantry over here, you can see, are just moving forwards at full charge right into the Eastern Auxilia Palatina. A couple of the units are fresh, but some of them are winded and tired from running such a great distance. We do have a movement here from James the Great's Clibinari. He was going to charge down into the Royal Estrationes, but he's decided at the last minute not to do that, and it looks like they're actually forming shield wall as we speak. But we've got some aggressive push here from the noble Germanic horsemen, followed closely behind by the Sogdian camel riders, and this is the first engagement here. It looks like we've got some of the infantry moving forwards to engage the spears of the Eastern Roman Empire, and we've got a lot of slingers over here as well that are going to be focusing down that Hetarier Guard because they have a very poor missile block, as we've discussed earlier. But as all Attila battles are, it's a pretty short battle. We've got almost 17,000 men on the battlefield today, though. So it does make for a little bit of lag, but as you can see, if I put it into slow motion, a lot of that lag is mitigated. And now there goes the Hetarier Guard throwing their ranged weapon. You can see that they are one-handed axes from what's lying on the ground, but we've got some returning fire from the archers. I believe that's the Frankish archers from the Franks, obviously. But the Hetarier Guard is closing in quite quickly. It's a really good idea with these axes who have poor missile block to throw them into melee as quickly as possible, because now there's not really any good shots for the Frankish archers to go for, because a lot of them are being protected by the backs of the enemy. But I am using a new keyboard and mouse for my Attila PC, as it were, so it may seem a little bit more choppy than usual, just because I haven't really gotten used to it. The mouse is actually a lot smaller than my hands, so in hindsight, probably not the best choice. But it's just so much easier to have, because I have two PCs, so it's easier to have two keyboards and mice instead of me having to constantly unplug one and plug in the other. But looks like we got Godin's Chosen not slowing down over here, but here we go. We've got the Camel Riders getting a nice charge into the Godin's Chosen. You can see a lot of them being thrown back there. That's actually a pretty good charge, I would say. These Camel Riders are extremely heavy. They actually do really well in prolonged melee against cavalry as well. But here we go. It looks like we've got Bayer's Chosen formed up, and well done to the attacker, to the enemies. I guess they are the attackers, but it's easier to talk to them or refer to them as enemies, so we know which one I am talking about at the time. But well done to the enemies here. They've actually formed up a defensive formation here with their backs to the red line, so pretty much stopping them from being completely outflanked. However, Mitterpack 1, he's still pushing heavily far to the right on the flank with his cavalry. Looking over here at James the Great, though, it looks like we've got those elephants pushing up the slopes here. He's going to have to be careful because I think the crossbows are really trying to get into range to focus them down. But looks like the Sassanid Armenian slingers there are doing an excellent job of destroying the elite Ballistari. We've actually got some of the Sogdian camel riders pulling forwards as well. But this is just all-out brawl. I can go ahead and turn it back onto play to get some of the battle sounds here, but it will be framey. That's one thing that I do appreciate about Thrones of Britannia. People have been asking me what my thought process is about it and asking me to do reviews on the games. I don't know if I'm going to do a review on it, but one thing I will say is that even though they're using the same Attila engine, I find that the game runs much smoother. Mind you, I haven't tried to put 20,000 men on the field in Thrones of Britannia. I think the most I've had is maybe 14 or 13, but it seems to be a lot less chuggy. The only thing that they still do have to patch is when you hold down spacebar to show the deployment areas or the deployment zones of the units. It incredibly affects FPS. It actually halves it, basically. Oh, but there we go. You can see the elephants up on the slopes there. They are pushing up. We've got the one-handed axes flying into melee as well. And you can see the slinger stones as well flying forwards. But there we go. These elephants are going to just wreck the poor Eastern Auxilia Palatina over here. They are trying to hold as best they can, but well done to the Sassanid player. You can see that he's lined his elephants up to just run right straight down the flanks of James the Great's forces. And look at that. Some morale penalties there on the Hetaria Guard. They're actually losing quite a bit of men as well. We've got some cavalry over here engaged against the spears. But yeah, these elephants are going to do some work. Let's go ahead and take a look at Max Laser's forces. So it looks like some of the Bayers chosen are breaking due to the overwhelming numbers that they're dealing with. However, it looks like he's got this flank under control against the Horse Slayers and the Francisca Hirben. Also doing well with this cavalry. It's 2-to-1 ratio there. It's just the Bayers chosen, I think, were kind of thrown in. And they're holding the tide, basically, so that the rest of the Aksum forces can get into position. Focusing down this cavalry here, the Sacra Francisca, they are really susceptible to fire arrows. You can see that really depletes their forces. Excellent job there. It looks like they are going to try and charge, but he's going to charge right into the backs of his own men, which isn't the best decision. Looking at Mitterpack 1, he's got his Menelatoi here formed up, but he needs to try and push them into melee a little bit quicker, because these crossbows here, these Germanic crossbowmen, are focusing them down quite well. And the Menelatoi, they do have like a scaled armor, but they still have very poor missile block due to the fact that they don't have shields. Most pikemen do have poor missile block. I think it's the elite Ostrogothic pikemen that stand the best in Attila, just due to the fact that they actually do have shields. But here we go. Looks like we're going to have some Sogdian warriors moving into melee, or maybe he's just going to withdraw them further and try and avoid melee altogether. We've got the Germanic pikemen here, but they will be slaughtered by the Menelatoi. The Menelatoi are much better than these Germanic pikes. Really, these Germanic pikes are pretty much useless. The only reason I do bring them, if I do bring 1 or 2 units, is I'll try and keep them in tow with my cavalry, and they actually do excellent work to win the cavalry engagement, especially if you're outnumbered or outclassed. But in prolonged melee against melee infantry, they don't really do too much. But here we go. This is actually a really nice shot here. We've actually got some of the Frankish cavalry finally engaging the Clibonari and the Tagmata cavalry of Mitterpack 1 over on this flank.
The men are broken and are fleeing.
But that's why I love these massive battles like this, because it kind of looks like almost 3 separate battles, because we've got 3 separate engagements going on here. But the stretch of this battle line in real life would probably be, 1 or 2 kilometers long, something like a mile long. It's pretty incredible to think about it from like a realist standpoint, like if this was a real battle. Imagine the chaos too, just trying to coordinate between forces, like this general over here, the Palatina Guard from James the Great. Imagine him trying to send messengers all the way to the other side to see how Mitterpack 1 and his Eastern Roman Empire forces are doing. Like, that could take sometimes 20 or 30 minutes, and a battle can be won or lost in that time. So I know maybe that's a lot more in-depth than most people are really thinking or wanting to think, but such is my commentary. I usually go pretty in-depth into things. I'm a little serious at times. I do realize that or recognize that. but it's just because I have a genuine interest in history, and especially ancient history like this. But man, these elephants still coming in to cause trouble. You can see them slamming into that depleted unit of Eastern Auxilia Palatina. We've got the Hetaria Guard rushing in over here to try to stem the tide that these elephants are causing. They're just ripping holes in James the Great lines.
Our men have regrouped.
Yeah, look, they just run pretty much through unopposed at this point. There we go, some more one-handed axes being thrown there from the top of the hill. And let's see how Max Laser is doing over here in the center. He's struggling a little bit, I think, just with holding all of this infantry back. Looks like he is pulling back his Desert Warlord to stay away from those Spearmasters. That is a good call. And he's actually getting some of his armored Camel Warriors in behind the lines. And he's controlling the right flank very well. It's just in the center, I think, that he's using a couple of his units to hold for as long as possible, and then allow his other units on the flanks to help turn the tide. But even over here, the Metalatoy, along with the armored Camel Warriors and the Met Georges Cavalry here, just running down the remaining skirmishers here in the center. Safbed is retreating. It looks like he's pulling back away from the pikemen, which was a smart idea. Let's go ahead and put this on slow motion just for a little bit longer. Yeah, basically, the horsemen over here and the Sacra Francisca, they're just here to hold as long as possible, but it looks like the balance of power is slipping away from them. I think where they did the most damage is against James the Great's army, just due to the fact that they had those armored Indian war elephants. You can see they already have 533 kills, so good use of them there. Let's zoom down and see what's left of the Hetaria Guard fighting these Armenian slingers here. I'm not exactly sure how well the slingers do in melee, to be honest. But against the Hetaria Guard, quite a few of them will be losing their heads, you can guarantee that. I love how they all have the yellow and purple cloaks. Very, very cool looking. Actually, a couple of them seem to be having green cloaks as well. And the last two war elephants there fighting on. And if we move the camera over towards Max Laser's force, it looks like we've got some more troops coming in to fight. And we've also got the Desert Warlord moving over here as well. He's going to get a nice charge into the Godin's Warlord. And a minute and 43 left in this battle. Don't think there's much more that the enemy forces are going to be able to do. We've got Safbed over here in the forest, holding on with the unit of Sacra Francisca. Actually, it looks like they're going to be able to rout Max Laser's cavalry, but we've got some infantry close behind, and Safbed is just going to retreat out of there. But unfortunately, in doing that, he's actually lost a lot of his cavalry unit, and there we go, he breaks. So that is bad. That is bad for the attacking forces here, or the enemy forces. And it looks like we're just running down the remaining troops at this point. So how many are still left here? Let's take a look. So yeah, it looks like the allied forces, they've lost about 4,000 or 5,000. 5,000, I think. And yeah, the enemy's just getting crushed, unfortunately. I think it was just to their positioning. They charged so much of their melee infantry in against James the Great here. You can see on this hilltop and this line just the utter carnage that was caused from them just having an all-out charge in against the Eastern Roman Empire over here. But then Max Laser also had to deal with quite a few of the infantry units. You can see a lot of bodies over on this flank. But then Bitterpack 1, he had, I think, the easiest time just because it was mostly just the enemy cavalry over here. So once he wrapped up the cavalry and some of the enemy archers and slingers, then he was able to push quite heavily in on the flank. And I think that is the end of the battle. So yeah, a little bit framey. Apologies for that, guys. But as I said before, there's really nothing I can do about that. The only way to fix the lag is to not play Total War Attila. But a Pyrrhic victory, so it is still considered a close battle. All right, sorry about that, guys. I had a little interruption, but I should be all right for the end results here. So let's take a look at Max Laser's force here. Doing really well with the armored camel warriors. In fact, all of his cavalry did pretty solid. The Bayar's Chosen, even though they were thrown into melee early on, they still managed to rack up a ton of kills. Same with the Maskell Spearmen here, and even the Sons of Invisible Mayrim. So he did well all around, I think. 256 with his Spice Guard. James the Great, who took the brunt, I think, of the infantry. His spears did pretty solid. They held as best as they could, but the Hatarier Guard getting a ton of kills. The crossbows getting 1 kill, so not really that worth it, but then making up for it with the Clibinari, 340 kills with this unit of cavalry here. And looking at Midderpack 1, yeah, a lot of his pikemen didn't really get into melee, and when they did, they kind of got cut up a bit, but again, doing really well with the Hatarier Guard, doing well with his armored Sagittari as well, and the Clibinari pretty solid. Looking at Pidaudu 5-9, his Spearmaster is doing solid. This couple of units of the Royal Ansercione is doing well. The Francisca Heerban, 183 kills. The cavalry was kind of a mixed bag. A couple of them with lower kills and a couple of them with higher kills. Looking at the Langobards, the General, 230. That is pretty solid. The Godin's Chosen here. A couple of them not getting very high kills, but other ones over 100, which is good. And looking at the French Fuhrer as the Sassanids, 107 kills with Safbed. That's good. He did really well with his archers too. Actually, he brought a pretty slinger-heavy army. So I wonder if they were thinking from the very beginning that they were going to kind of operate as one army. But yeah, 582 kills with that Indian armored war elephant. So well done there. So yeah, guys, hopefully you didn't mind the lag. Again, these big battles is really not much we can do, but it was a very interesting tactical battle, I find, in today's battle. So thanks very much to James the Great and Max Laser for sending it in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this in the future. And as always, I will see you in the next one.